What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. It is a hangover. It was a long weekend for myself. I had a little bit of issues. It was a little warm down here in Texas. We have a special guest tonight. You guys know him from the Big Bro Sco Show. Big Bro, how's it going, my man? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Happy to join you tonight. I didn't even hear exactly why, but I'm going to guess Shannon's on vacation.
Yeah. Shannon's he's taking some time off. He's gone out there with the family, doing a little bit of the vacay thing. So I appreciate you joining us and taking some time out to talk to us about some Steelers football.
Oh, nothing better than talking Steelers football. I like. I don't know. For some reason, on my drive to work this morning, I was thinking about stuff and was like, "Wow!" Like we are just days away from the first preseason game. That's what I was thinking because actually my wife and daughter are going to the game. They're using my tickets because I have something else I had going on. But I was thinking about them going this weekend and thought, wow, it really is just about fall because when football starts, I start to think fall.
I do too, and it's just around the corner. And in fact, it hit me today as well. I was thinking about it. I was like, man, football is it's happening, which is the title of the show. It's finally happening. It's finally here after a long hiatus, a long off season. I know we had some training camp news and things of that nature, but we're finally going to be able to see all the new pieces of the Pittsburgh Steelers come together this Friday night when they take on the Houston Texans in Acrisure Stadium. All eyes are going to be on the quarterback position. I'm sure yours are as well as mine. Who's going to be trotting out there with the ones to start the game against Houston this week?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a feeling that we're going to need to see a little bit more Russell Wilson before that's going to be, I'd lean towards Russ, but we're going to have to see a little more Russ as the week goes on here to really show that he's good and ready to go. Otherwise, it'll probably be Fields.
Yeah, I think it's going to end up probably being Fields, just because of the fact that up to this point, Russ really hasn't done much. Now, I don't think there's been a lot of or there doesn't need to be a lot of worry about the calf injury. It doesn't seem like it's hindering him in much of what he has been able to do. It surely does appear from the outside looking in that a lot of this is, maybe perhaps Mike Tomlin's doing just to kind of see what Justin Fields looks like. And we've heard a lot of things coming out of camp from Justin Fields, some positive, a lot of positive, a little bit of here and there, some folks saying that they remind him of Chicago. But overall, based on what you've seen from highlights and whatnot, I'm not sure if you've made it out there to training camp this season or not, but what you've seen and read, what are your thoughts about Justin Fields' performance thus far in training camp? Do you think he's a potential Steeler quarterback in the future?
He may be, and honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, you know what? If the Steelers are happy with Russell Wilson, um, does he need a lot of reps in training camp?
It's true.
I don't know that he needs a ton of reps as much as he needs to get playbook down and verbiage and all that. So if you don't need to see a ton of Russ and he tweaked that calf a little bit, why not use it as an opportunity to get Justin Fields on the field some more? Because that's really what he needs. He needs more time, more snaps. Um, he's shown flashes of just being phenomenal, but every once in a while he likes to revert back to what I'll call some. I don't even want to call it bad habits. I'll call it sloppy play. His mechanics break down, and he's not as accurate. Um, and if this is a good chance for him to work some of that out, there is the chance he could be the guy eventually. If they have the time to work with him on some of these things and clean it up.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that when you look at Justin Fields' career as a starter, one, he came out of Ohio State into the draft very young. I mean, he's only 25 now. So a lot of these quarterbacks is around this time is when they starting to get their stride going as far as when their careers goes. He came out younger than most. He's already had, a up and down seasons as an NFL quarterback and not the most stable of organizations. And so this is just the beginning. I think it is very positive. It's a positive outlook. And I'm not necessarily thinking that he's going to end up being in some sort of competition for the position this year. But I do think that over the span of this year, this is going to be a huge tryout for him. And I think that if he ends up showing the Pittsburgh Steelers that he can progress in the right direction under a steady organization with the tradition that the Pittsburgh Steelers organization has, move them in the right direction, move him in the right direction. I mean, he definitely could be the future, but you know, uh, I like what I see out of everything so far. I think that he has a very high ceiling. It's that floor. I think like you mentioned, we got to we got to be worried about. We got to increase that floor a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what he's able to do this year. Now, temper expectations. This is going to be a preseason game, so if he goes out there and shows up, I mean, maybe this fan base might be better than anybody else to kind of temper their expectations after last year's preseason. I don't know if you've heard. Speaking of which, Kenny Pickett, it seems like he's being knocked down to the third quarterback position out there in Philly.
Yeah, I saw that.
What do you think about that?
Well, let me tell you what. If that ends up playing out that way, how smart will Omar Khan look?
Oh yeah, very, very.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Everybody oohed and awed when the Steelers did that and thought, what are they doing? What are they doing? But if it turns out that he can't even snag the backup role in Philadelphia, then you got to start to think, wow, maybe the Steelers knew what they were up to.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty unprecedented for the Pittsburgh Steelers to give up on a first round pick after 2 years. I mean, it's been, I think it was a guard or a tackle so many years ago that the Pittsburgh Steelers ended up, moving on from after 2 years. It's been a while, especially in the quarterback position was the one that a lot of people wouldn't have expected, this organization to move on so quickly from. But if he's not able to at least get down to two, then yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. It just, people can say, the last thing I'll say on that is this. Omar Khan was with the Steelers when that pick was made, but Omar Khan was not the GM when that pick was made. How often do you see it that when new GMs come into a team that they want the quarterback that's their guy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did that play into it at all? Don't know. Not sure that we'll ever know. But you can think about it.
Yeah, and when Kenny Pickett was drafted, I thought that was a huge, I guess, maybe insurance card for the organization and for the new general manager, that the old general manager is the one who ended up picking him. That way, if it didn't work out, it wasn't their guy, and they can move on quickly. I just really didn't, as much as I thought that was a possibility when they drafted him, and I'll be honest, as much as I didn't think he was going to pan out, I didn't think that was going to end up being the case, or it wasn't going to come out to fruition, that the Steelers would make that move. And it seems like they're making the right ones. I really do love all the moves that Omar Khan has been making. And there's one brewing. I guess we'll get into it now. There's one brewing. It's not official. It's, there's nothing done yet. Brandon Aiyuk has been, he's on the trade news again. And Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the teams that are highly speculated to be a team that's interested in him and potentially trade partners with the San Francisco 49ers. Hasn't happened yet. What are your initial thoughts? Do you think it's going to happen? And if it does, what do you think it means for the Steelers?
I don't know if it's going to happen. Again, just because there's talks doesn't mean anything's going to happen. I'm one of those that I feel like, do the Steelers need to do it? No. I don't think they need to do it. Could it potentially help them? Possibly, depending on what it is they would have to give up in the trade. I don't want Omar Khan to give up too much capital. Then you could start saying, well, what's too much capital? In terms of trading players away, if you have depth in places, and you're okay with things, you go ahead and you go ahead and you make that trade. I don't want to see us give up too much draft capital. That's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I don't either. I think there's going to be, because there's two parts of this coin, right? There's what you're going to give up in draft capital, and there's what you're going to have to pay him as well.
Yep.
Now, he hasn't agreed to, I think there were somewhere around 28 million a year between himself and the 49ers. So you're looking probably somewhere similar, maybe perhaps because, Pennsylvania is a little bit different when it comes to taxes in California. He might end up seeing a little bit more money out there in Pennsylvania, but I do think he's going to end up coming close to about that 28, $30 million a year. That's a hefty price tag to pay on top of potentially what it is that they're looking for as far as trade capital. Now, there's been a lot of talk and conversation that James Daniels might be a guy that's involved in this trade. If it ends up taking the starting right guard out of this equation, do you like that more or less, knowing that you're going to still have to pay him?
The part about paying him is the biggest issue. It
Mm,
really is. If the Steelers were to decide, okay, we can afford him, so let's make a trade. And if the Steelers say, well, we can trade James Daniels, it's only because the Steelers know that what they have to take James Daniels' place is good enough to make the trade worth it. Otherwise, why would you make the trade?
true.
You're not going to trade away and leave yourself a big gaping hole in the offensive line to gain another wide receiver. It it just wouldn't make any sense.
That's true. That's true. And the Steelers have, well, according to James Daniels, there's not going to be any talk of an extension, and we're not going to expect to see that. It sounds like he's going to go into his final year. I think that's a big component as to why he might be somebody who is rumored along to be in that realm of possible trade capital for Brandon Ayuk. But there's another question, also another side of that coin is, what does that mean for George Pickens? He's a guy that I think the Steelers are going to want to extend. He's a guy that the Steelers drafted, and Mike Tomlin hasn't been a stranger of saying that he likes the guys that he drafts and builds because they've had bad experiences bringing in the free agents from outside who haven't bought into the program just because they weren't built into the program, so to speak. So if the Steelers end up trading for an Aiyuk, do you think that leaves small possibility or no possibility for George Pickens' extension once his contract is up?
Yeah, I don't know. And right now, honestly, I think I'd maybe the way things have been at camp, like Pickens and Jefferson have really been pretty good at camp. Those two guys, they have really balled out. And honestly, if the Steelers had a role right now with Jefferson as the number two, I'd be okay with that. Especially if we're going to get the tight ends involved in the passing game a little more, which is why all this renewed talk of Aiyuk is really annoying. Really annoying. I'm really tired of it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. It's one of those things where I thought it was over because I thought the 49ers were making a deal with him not too long ago. It doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. But, with who the Steelers have at the wide receiver position, let's just say that doesn't happen. Who's going to be opposite side of George Pickens? Is it going to be Calvin Austin on the outside, or is it going to be Jefferson there on the outside, opposite side of Pickens?
Well, I think Arthur Smith's going to have different packages, and I think it could be
Mm,
different guys depending on what packages he's running out there. I think you could see Calvin Austin out there some. You're going to see Van Jefferson out there some. Um, I mean, when he heals up, eventually you could see Roman Wilson out there some. It's I don't think it's going to. After George Pickens, I don't know that any of the other receivers are necessarily going to have a totally defined role as much. And any of them that can learn multiple spots are going to see more time on the field because they become more valuable being able, to play in the slot, play on the outside. Yeah, play in the slot, play the X, play the Y. The more they can do it and learn those plays, the more valuable they'll become.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right on that. And Pat Fryermuth, I think, is going to have a huge component in the passing game. It seems like he's going to have a much larger role. Arthur Smith knows what to do with a tight end, apparently, unlike our previous offensive coordinator. So I really do think he's going to end up having a bigger role here this upcoming season, and he may end up taking a lot of those snaps. So when it boils down to having a Brandon Aiyuk on the team, I think it's more of a luxury than it would be a necessity at this point, given the the offensive game plan that we are anticipating. It's probably one that's not going to be utilized multiple wide receivers. I think that the pass catching is going to be done by largely probably one receiver, George Pickens, and then the tight ends and some of the running backs. The receivers obviously outside of George are going to get some targets as well, but I think Pat Fryermuth might end up being that wide receiver number two. But the biggest thing for me, and I know it's something that we've already talked about, is going all in on a Brandon Aiyuk. I think that's a move you make when you have the answer at the quarterback position. And I don't think the Steelers have that answer yet. I mean, could they have the answer? Maybe, possibly, but they don't have one for sure. To kind of make a move like that, I think that without a quarterback signed for next season, to make a move like that, it's kind of, I don't know. It's unless it's just an amazing deal you can't pass up. I think it's probably ill-willed until you figure out that quarterback position.
Yeah, in some ways, it would almost seem like a desperation move for desperation that I don't think needs to be there.
Yeah.
I don't think the Steelers are desperate. So that's why I really, really question it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Even though there's been a lot of rumors here and there of the Steelers interested in one receiver or another, it would, if they were to trade in a tremendous amount, that would reek desperate. And I don't think that they need that right now. I think you're absolutely right. So Najee Harris, do you think he's going to play this Friday night, or do you think he'll be sitting out as he normally has done in preseason games past?
Um, no, last year they were sitting him out because he had some of that foot issue from the year before, and just trying to be safe. I think if he's healthy, I think we see him for a series.
I do too, and I think he actually carries the ball. I think the last
Yeah,
couple of times he's been in preseason, he's not carried the ball. I think he does this time.
yeah,
And
I do too because I really think I think they'll want to see Arthur Smith's just basically Najee needs to carry the ball so we can see what the blocking is for the offensive line.
that's true. That's true. That would be true. I think that would be important. The offensive line is a huge conversation on its own. And we're going to get into that conversation as soon as we get back after a few words from our sponsors. We're going to take a quick break right now. Don't go anywhere. The YouTube side will be back after a few seconds. And we're back. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Big Brosco. We're talking about it's finally here. Preseason week 1 is here. It's about to happen this week. We're getting into the conversation of the players that are going to be taking the field this upcoming Friday night. But before we get into it, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Be up to date on all your Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. While you're there, you can check out our audio-only podcast, including my own, that airs out on Friday at noon, called State of the Steelers. You don't want to miss it. This last Friday's was pretty good. Go check it out. With that being said, let's get back into it. So we left off at the offensive line. Where do you value earning the position versus chemistry and camaraderie in a shortened preseason week 1 coming up ahead when it comes to the center and the offensive tackle position with Frazier and Fatuanu? Where do you value that ratio there of how much do they need to earn it and how much do you need to get those guys ready to go?
It's a mix because they do need to earn it, but that's actually one of the good reasons why they play preseason's games. And you won't see it as much this week as potentially, I think, next week, where you'll see both of those guys get a few snaps with the ones.
Mm.
I really think that you'll see, a little bit of overlap in there by next week, maybe not this week. Um, I it's one of those where you've got to kind of trust the coaches a little bit. They're seeing, they're evaluating the players at camp. They're I'm sure breaking down some film on some things, looking at guys. Um, I try to trust them, but I also say, if it's going to end up being a guy, one of the young guys, don't take too long to let it be one of the young guys. If they're really going to be the guy, get them ready then and get them in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Especially like for a guy like James Daniels. I know we were talking about him as a possible trade bait, but if if he's there, Fatuano steps up, Frazier steps up. Those are guys both new, both rookies on either side of him. I think he would probably benefit of getting a customer used to their strengths, their weaknesses, what they're used to, what they're not used to. I mean, there's going to be two new players, and given that thought that you're going to have two new players on that side alone, do you think they both have the opportunity to start week one, or do you think they're going to bring one in and then the next, just so that they don't mess that up?
It might be one of them, then the next. If you're really going to go by, James Daniel having two new guys and or whatever, and which one you do first. Technically, I think you'd then do Frazier first because you've got to, otherwise it's Herbig. Well, Herbig wasn't the center last year either. So no matter what, the center position is going to be new to start the season next to James Daniels. So to me, then, if Frazier was ready, he'd make more sense. But if he's not ready, don't do it just because it would make sense. Like, he's got to be there and be ready. If Herbig right now is your better center, then you go with the guy that's better.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I definitely agree with that.
I think Fuatanu is I think he's the one that's probably got the inside leg in terms of just being just just a freak of nature almost. I mean, have you looked at that guy without pads on?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
like it you know what I think of when I see him? I remember when Shaquille O'Neal was coming out of LSU, right?
Uh-huh.
When Shaq was first coming out, was in college and first coming in the NBA, that guy was just like solid. He was built, he was solid. It didn't look like he had any fat on him anywhere. And that, you know, Fuatanu for a big guy does not look like he's carrying as much weight as he carries. To me, that guy's probably got to be freakishly strong.
Mhm.
Which is also probably why he's good at tackle because he's carrying that weight so well. I think that's why he moves so well.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and he's got those long arms as well, and I think that also probably, does with the appearance there as well. He's The Steelers were happy to get him. I mean, I think it was Omar Khan that was saying that every 10 minutes that passed by was like the longest 10 minutes ever. It felt sick and nauseous because the Steelers had him very high up on their draft board. He was a necessity and a need. And, I, I'm excited about this offensive line. I think by the time, the midseason point comes around, this offensive line is going to be humming on all cylinders. But going into this season, going into preseason, there's got to be some growing pains, with this offense. And I feel that, in order to get those growing pains through them, the only way to get through them is just to be out there and playing. And so I anticipate these guys to play a lot of snaps throughout this entire preseason. But you think that it'll be Dan Moore and Herbig to start off the game? How many series do you think they got before the rookies will come in?
Um, Herbig may get an extra series, but really I expect to see most of the other guys just probably one series, two maybe.
Hmm.
Couple for the offensive line, just enough to. Well, it also depends, as I like to say, it also depends on what those offensive possessions are. If it's just three and outs, you're going to see more. if they can sustain a couple of decent, a decent drive here or there, it's going to come down more to how many snaps I think they play.
Mm.
And I imagine you're going to want to see most of the starting offensive line play 12 to 15 snaps, and then go on to evaluate some of the other guys on the team. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're probably going to get maybe a series or two, and I think that you're going to see Frazier. You're going to see, I'm not sure Broderick's going to play. I heard he's been a little bit in and out of the lineup somewhat. So being the first game, maybe not. Maybe he'll only get a drive as well. But I anticipate seeing Frazier. I anticipate seeing Fatuanu in there for a good amount of time, throughout this game. And McCormick is another guy that I'm interested in seeing, in there at the guard position at the backup with the second line as well. He had his, from what I've heard, he had his welcome to the NFL moment going up against Cam Hayward. He seems to be back in full force. I doubt he'll be participating, but I can't wait to see Cam play. I think a lot of the defense will probably be sitting out a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, we won't see Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward won't play. May not even see T.J. Watt. If so, maybe just like he wouldn't even play a whole defensive series. Maybe just a couple of snaps, if that. We'll see a little bit, but probably not much of Minkah Fitzpatrick either. That would be my guess defensively, that you're not going to see much of those guys. And then I do know Patrick Queen's been nursing a little bit of an injury, so I'll be interested to see how much we see him. But honestly, some of those top of the lineup guys, I'm not that worried about. So you don't see Patrick Queen. Okay, what does that mean? That means we're going to see more Peyton Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not a bad thing to see some more of him and see what he can do, because he's had a pretty decent camp so far.
Yeah, I'm excited about Peyton Wilson. I think that he has I know the reason why he dropped was because of the whole medical stuff. But if it weren't for the medical stuff, I think this guy would have been definitely top 2 rounds in the draft, if not top draft, first rounder. I think he has everything that you're looking for in an inside linebacker to be what you want. And
yeah,
go ahead.
He'd have gone by mid-second.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have gone by mid-second round. He would have made it past halfway through the second round if it wasn't for the question, surrounding the knee. To which, I love how surprised he seemed about that. The knee? Why is everybody worried about my knee? I'm fine. So.
Yeah. I mean, when you hear just the thought that, man, he doesn't have an ACL. So, yeah, I'm not going to lie. When I heard that, I was like, that's kind of weird. And then I started, looking into other players that didn't have one. Hines Ward didn't have one. And he had a pretty awesome career as a Pittsburgh Steeler. And so I was like, all right, maybe perhaps you don't need it. And then I realized that whole knee issue that he hadn't been it had been happening early on in his college career. So he hadn't been dealing with it for a while. And he'd been performing at a high level with the whole knee thing going on. So I was like, all right, this is probably going to be something that the Steelers don't need to worry about. And I think that when it comes to Pittsburgh, as far as the medical goes, I think they have probably one of the best, if not the best, medical staff, in the NFL, just given their connections to UPMC and things of that nature. So, yeah, I think that he's going to be in great hands. But another player on defense that I think is going to get a lot of play that I'm excited to see, it's undrafted Beanie Bishop. He's been playing first reps as a slot corner. It seems like it's his job. How excited are you about Beanie Bishop? How familiar are you with him?
I am decently familiar with Beanie. Was actually, when he wasn't drafted, was thrilled to see the Steelers go get him. Everybody worries about his size because he's not a real big guy. But sometimes you just want that. Sometimes it's the guy that has that swagger that doesn't matter what their size is that can come through and make plays. And so far, that's what Beanie Bishop looks like. That his swagger makes him a much bigger player than he actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Beanie Bishop, it seems like he's hungry. He's ready to go out there. A lot of comparisons to Mike Hilton, but even better coverage ability. And it seems like when the Steelers ended up cutting his only backup, Cam Sutton is a guy that I think that could fill in the role of the slot cornerback position if need be, but he's not going to be available for the first half of the season. And all indications from what I've heard is he's played more safety position in training camp this so far than in the slot position. And I think a lot of that has to do with getting Beanie Bishop ready to go. A good problem to have is if Beanie Bishop doesn't need Cam Sutton come week 8 to come in and relieve him. I'm excited. I mean, when you look at what the Steelers have done with the other rookies and not giving them, they've had to earn their position as well. I think this might be speaking volumes to what Beanie Bishop's been able to show up and show during training camp as far as what, his ability to get those first team reps. Joey Porter and Deontay Jackson are going to be on the outside. Outside of those two guys, what other cornerbacks are you excited to see this preseason game?
Well, I kind of want to see where Corey Trice is. I was excited when we got him last year and thought he was going to, potentially be able to add a lot to our corner room. Then he had the injury on the first day with pads on early in that practice, so we didn't really get to see much. And you just want to see, we can watch him at camp and watch him as Coach Tom likes to say, can't evaluate much of football in shorts, but you can start to really evaluate when you put all the pads on and you're not lining up against a teammate, you're lining against an opposing team. So he's somebody I'm really excited to see what he brings.
Yeah, I mean, too. Corey Trice is the guy that I think a lot of people were really hype about last season, and nobody got to see anything. And so I'm excited to finally get to see him out there. He seems to be the very much of a clone almost of Joey Porter Jr. to a certain extent as far as height and physicality. So it'll be exciting to see those two kind of players meshing back there. And then up front, I mean, Keanu Benton, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do. And Herbig, he apparently has had himself a camp as well.
Yeah.
He's going to be the 3. I know the Steelers just signed Golden back, but I don't think there's any competition with who's going to be the outside linebacker number 3. What are your thoughts on Herbig, Golden, and the rest of the defensive line that will be playing this Friday?
Yeah. Well, I'll talk Herbig first a little bit. He looks to be that guy that really studied up in the offseason. And you can tell if you've watched some of the clips of some of the stuff he's done at camp, he has spent a lot of time with TJ Watt. He's, I've always felt that, when TJ would go back to Wisconsin, I think that Herbig picked his brain then, but I think he's picked it even more now and is really, what I want to say, Herbig's really figured out how to play off the strengths he has physically and use them to his advantage. Also for a guy that everybody said was kind of small coming in to play outside linebacker, again, he's strong.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was pointing at myself because I was one of those guys that was kind of small.
Said, but you know what? Everybody said Jack Labert was too small to play inside linebacker. After a couple of years, people quit saying that.
That's true.
So
that is true.
He became one of the most feared guys in the middle of the field. So, tough to say a guy's too small if he can keep showing out that, nope, I've got other things that I can bring to make up for that.
I agree. Yeah, I was one of those guys. I'll be honest. I said maybe they should move him to off-ball linebacker because he's the perfect size. And then as soon as he gets out there, he shuts me up, not just once, but multiple times. And almost every time that he's out there, he's producing plays repeatedly and repeatedly. The next question is going to be, do you think that maybe perhaps Herbig can start taking some snaps away from somebody like a Highsmith?
Um, I don't know. It's not so much that I think of it that they're taking it away. What it gives them the ability to do is put guys in at the outside linebacker position and say, you know, go Tasmanian Devil. Just go go crazy, go nuts, because when you got to look over and say, hey, I need a breath, we got another Tasmanian Devil to throw right out there in your place. Um, that to me is the advantage.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I think you're right there. And when it comes to, like I said, both of them, and I'm not saying that one needs to. I'm not saying that Alex Highsmith needs to have snaps taken away from him or any of those type of things. But at a certain point, the players out there, it's not so much that you taken away from one as much as one player is demanding more. And I think that might be something that we can possibly end up seeing from a guy like Herbig if he continues in the trajectory that he's been going. And I mean, I think it was maybe it was Fatuanu. He stopped. He was able to stop T.J. Watt on 1-on-ones, but he struggled with Herbig, and this is something that I've been hearing constantly, that offensive linemen, no matter which ones they are struggling against Herbig when it's on any type of drill or anything like that. So the guy's got a motor, and the guy can move. I'm excited about him.
Right, and you know what? If he gets more snaps this year, what I see is he'll get a few of Highsmith's snaps, but I also think he gets a few of T.J. Watt's snaps.
Mhm.
Um, wouldn't it be nice to not have to play T.J. Watt a gazillion snaps, so that
Sure.
at the end of the year, T.J. Watt is still rolling, ready to go? I'm not saying cut his snaps a bunch, but you know, like 6 snaps. Think if you took 6 snaps from T.J. Watt and 6 snaps from Alex Highsmith, means that you took Herbig and you took what he was getting before and you increased it by 12.
That's quite a bit. That's a good amount.
Yeah. So it doesn't take much to get the guy on the field more. And then if he keeps earning it, then you keep giving it to him. If he produces, I mean that's all any Steelers fan wants. I mean, nobody's going to complain if he snags a few snaps from somebody here or there if he produces.
It's true. That's true, and I think he will. I mean, there hasn't been any sign of him not doing so. So I'm excited for what he's going to be able to bring to the table. Um, and who knows? The offense might be able to do what they're supposed to do and keep the defense off the field as much as especially compared to what they have been on the field here as of recent. And so maybe perhaps we'll see how those snaps end up being distributed. But at the end of the day, it's a good problem to have. Him, Herbig, Highsmith, T.J. Watt, all those guys. I think this defense has the opportunity to be a top 5 defense this year if health prevails. And I mean, I don't want to get too excited, but I think that the offense doesn't necessarily need to be juggernaut for this team to be explosive and this team to do some damage and maybe perhaps make a run. How far that run goes, we'll see. We're just getting to the first preseason game. Um,
Yeah, the offense doesn't need to be elite. What I'd like to see more from the offense this year is to control the ball more. Um,
mhm.
a good mix of the running game, the passing game. You know, even drives that start at your own 10 or 15 yard line that go and you get to midfield and punt and pin them back. Well, at least you took that time and you got to midfield. You control the ball. You allowed your defense some time to catch a break.
Mhm.
Get away from the famous, from Matt Canada's favorite play, which is favorite set of plays, which is 3 and out. So,
Yeah.
if we can get away from that, you'll see a big improvement, I think, record wise from this team.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. The last thing that I'm excited to see. for this. Well, I'm excited for a lot of things, but one of the last big topics that I'm excited to see this preseason game is how the Steelers are going to do this kickoff thing. Who do you think is going to be back there to receive the kickoffs? Is it going to be Plumlee? Is it going to be Calvin Austin? Who do you think's back there?
No clue. I mean, this is like, honestly, this kickoff change is like the first time we watched the XFL years ago when they put two guys at midfield and had them, race for the ball. Um, until we really start to see it, I'm not sure what to think of it. So I don't want to guess who should be where. I'm hard to tell where the Steelers are going to start with that. Um, I may agree with Mr. Woodside, who put out there, if healthy, it's Cordero Patterson. I expect to see Patterson probably start it initially.
Yeah.
Partly because until you get a better grasp on what it's going to be, I'd rather have somebody that's used to returning the ball a lot.
That's true. That is true. I'm gonna be excited to watch it. It's gonna be an exciting thing. Boz is gonna kick it. You think it's gonna be Boz kicking that on the kickoffs?
Yeah, I mean, eventually it will be, but I expect to see a lot of what the Steelers have been running there at camp when they've been practicing this.
What's that?
Oh, they've been teeing the ball up sideways. Matthew Wright's been teeing the ball up sideways and kicking knuckleballs.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
I think you're going to see a lot of that around the league. I think you're going to really see a change in how the ball is delivered.
That would be interesting. I'm excited to see that. I want to see how this works because there's some gnarly gnarly rules there. I mean, some penalties there if it goes into the end zone, if it's fair caught, if it doesn't quite make it to the 20. Like there's some pretty hefty rules there. And I fully anticipate this is going to be bringing the play back into the game. I'm being excited to see how these teams tackle these challenges that they'll be faced with. From a roster standpoint, it sure does seem like the Steelers are looking into tight ends and linebackers.
Yes. Yes. Could we put any more tight ends on the roster right now?
100%. Well, big bro, you have a show tomorrow with Dave Schofield. Anything else you got working on, or is that all you got going on this week?
Well, of course, for the game on Friday night, I'll be writing my knee-jerk reaction article to the game. So
Awesome.
I will spend the evening in my living room while my wife and daughter are at the game, and I will write and give my knee-jerk reactions. I will say this: people will have to forgive me because it is tough in the preseason because I just don't know everybody. So I'm trying to write the article on over here while I've got an entire roster up over here so that I can make sure I'm getting the right guy, talking about the right guys. And then I love when they start mixing and matching numbers.
Oh yeah, that's when it gets interesting.
Yeah. So,
Well, guys, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're listening to this on the YouTube side, even if you're not listening to this live, if you're catching this on the replay, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. That way you're notified of all of our content. You'll catch Big Bro tomorrow live here with Dave Schofield on the Big Bro Sco Show. Until next time, we'll see y'all then. Peace out, everybody. Peace.